Hey guys, I'm stuck in LA traffic going about 2 miles an hour, so I thought I would make a video of a topic that I think is sort of like the elephant in the room. It's like the most important topic, but it's the one that is sort of hard to articulate, or at least not very many people have attempted to articulate it, so I'm going to try. And that is basically that the fundamental concept of Eric Johnson style mold avoidance is sort of part A and part B. The part A is that there are these things called super toxins, and they're the toxins that our bodies really have a super hard time dealing with and that make us super sick and prevent recovery. And they are mold toxins, but they can be different for different times of the recovery. For someone who's a lot sicker and more sensitive, they may be reactive to smaller amounts of them, and for someone who is more further down the road, they might be able to tolerate more. Some people are reactive to certain ones, but less so others. So that's exhibit A, or part A. Part B is that the way that we know how to stay away from these super toxins and get well is we sort of have to learn how to turn our bodies into superhero bodies where we have superpowers and we can detect these toxins with our bodies, with our reactions and our senses, and that the more we try to identify them with laboratory testing or appearances, like, ooh, there's mold in a corner there. Yeah, that doesn't work looking at it that way. Sometimes there could be mold in a corner and it's not harmful at all. And other times you might have a tiny bit of mold that you can't see that is a super toxin. So the more you try to deviate from these concepts, that is that mold super toxins are what's keeping us sick, and we need to learn to use our bodies to detect that. The more you deviate from those two concepts, the more you're really getting away from Eric style avoidance. And some people might get better without Eric style avoidance, but many people, especially the people that we talk to and that participate in the groups, will not get better without that. So that's what our sort of focus is in our Facebook group called Practical Mold Avoidance. But I also recommend just as highly Lisa Peterson. She has a group just called Mold Avoiders. And basically that's sort of the fundamental concept, is those two premises, that there's these super toxins and that we have to learn to use our body. I'm trying to get the camera to bounce around less, but it's not very successful. That we have to learn how to detect those and stay away from them. And then the other thing, and I would sort of make a third point about that, is that these super toxins are 1,000 times more harmful and toxic than other things we deal with. So, for example, EMF, electromagnetic pollution, or chemicals, or fragrances, or whatever else you want to pick, that these super toxins that we try to avoid are 1,000 times more harmful to us than all of those other toxins. And that by going out of our way to avoid super toxins, I mean way out of our way, like doing crazy inconvenient things, like trading in a brand new RV when you've only owned it for 3 months because it gets contaminated with one of these toxins, that doing that is 1,000 times more beneficial than avoiding pollution or drinking the right kind of water or whatever else. And this is how you get well. And the more you avoid it, the more your body becomes able to detox and deal with all the other toxins, because the super toxins are sort of the master toxin that prevents the body from dealing with all the other ones. It's sort of like the key that unlocks them all. If you ever saw Lord of the Rings, the magic ring is the ring that controls them all. So whoever has that one powerful ring can control all the whole world, basically. That's like what the super toxins are. You got to control the super toxins, and by doing that, you control everything else. And the more you do that effectively, the more you are able to then not have to avoid anything quite as much, whether that's pollution or fragrances or anything. Your body becomes resilient again, and even becomes resilient a little bit toward the super toxins the more time goes on. So that's kind of the elephant in the room. That's like the foundation of this approach. And so anyone who says, you know, oh, I walked into a house and it smelled musty, so it's a bad house. No, it's not a bad house. Just because it smells musty, it could be a minor mold toxin that's not dangerous, or not as dangerous. And people who say, oh, I avoided that city because it was smoggy or it had agriculture. No, that's also not how this works, because people find that they become much more resilient to the effects of smog and ag toxins and everything else when they avoid super toxins. So there's all kinds of ways to get off track of this concept. If you think about this is not a narrow road to follow, doing extreme mold avoidance, avoiding these super toxins. It doesn't have a fence that keeps you on the right path. It's like an omnidirectional maze where there's lots of ways to get lost and go the wrong way. So you sort of have to pay attention to the people who know how to do it and listen to what they say, because if you don't, there's a million ways to get distracted. EMF, electromagnetic frequencies, is one big example. I thought for a while that I was having really bad reactions to electromagnetic frequencies. And it turns out I was actually having bad reactions to EMF, cell towers, power lines. But the experts of this approach told me, oh, it probably means there's a super toxin present. And the mold toxins make the EMF feel much worse. I didn't listen for a long time. I said, no, I don't believe you. I react to the EMF, therefore the EMF is the problem. And I had to learn the hard way, because when I went to a better location where there were not super toxins present in the outdoor air, I could be around the same power lines and EMF and have no reaction to them at all. So again, it's very easy to get distracted. That's just one example of how to get distracted. You have to try not to get distracted. Even if you stay on course and you don't get distracted, it still takes a really long time to recover. So if you're going to get distracted and go off on all the rabbit holes, then it's going to take you a lot longer, way longer. So try not to get distracted. Another thing is that as you get better, I sort of hinted at this, but as you get better, you will need to be less strict about how to avoid it and about where you can detox. Essentially, the whole goal of this is to get the body to turn detox back on. The body gets so freaked out by these super toxins that it shuts off detox of everything, not just super toxins, but it won't detox regular toxins either. So people start accumulating metals and chemicals, and their body just becomes a toxic waste dump. So one interesting thing that happened to me is my body was so toxic that I wasn't able to detox anywhere but the most pristine places. And the body will decide to detox in a very pristine place. But the goal is to not have to be in a pristine place all the time, because it's a pain in the butt. Even though it's beautiful and it's lovely, you can't live there easily. So one of the things I notice now that I've been doing this a while is now I'm in Anaheim. I'm in basically a concrete jungle here. And I by the way, I don't feel bad about making this video because we're going about 2 miles an hour in rush hour traffic. So I'm not too distracted. But I feel those same sensations that tells me that my body is detoxing now in Anaheim, that I used to only feel when I was in a pristine location. Meaning that my body has gotten healthy enough that it will detox in worse and worse locations. You can definitely abuse that and go to get yourself screwed up again by not being in a clean enough location. But sort of what my plan is now is, I don't really want to live in a pristine location full time. The ones that we found are so far off the beaten path that you really don't have much access to children's activities and things that our kids need. So what I would like to try to do now is spend like a month or two every year in a pristine location, sort of for like a checkup or a touch-up or like a fix-up, to get things back on track. And maybe I won't even need to do that. Another thing that I found that seems to give me the same fix-up is doing IV ozone, 10-pass ozone. That's where I'm actually coming from right now, my doctor's office in Oceanside, who does 10-pass ozone. The ozone seems to sort of be a reset button in some ways and break loose all of the mold and crap that's blocking the detox channels. I have not found that avoidance replaces 10-pass ozone, and I have not found that 10-pass ozone replaces avoidance. I seem to need both of them. But I did have a very big breakthrough this time around. Normally at about the 3-month mark without ozone, I'm just dying for ozone. I'm begging to go back to get ozone. And this time the 3-month mark rolled around and I didn't have that feeling. Yeah, ozone sounded nice, and I did go back and get it at about 3.5 months, but I feel like I could easily go another month or two without it, which is a breakthrough for me. I mean, you know, maybe one day I won't need it at all. That seems to be the way the trend is going, and I credit a lot of this breakthrough to being in a better location in New Mexico, where I was exposed to fewer super toxins, and the super toxins that affected me personally. There are some super toxins like mystery toxin, like MT we call it, that seem to affect everybody. But there are other super toxins that maybe our body has been more damaged by, and therefore they're worse for us. And one of those seems to be this toxin in the Reno, Nevada area that's actually covering a lot of Nevada. Las Vegas, Reno, you know, I mean, we're talking 1,000 miles or 700 miles worth of distance that this toxin seems to be. And as long as I don't live in that area, my body seems to be a lot happier, in addition to avoiding mystery toxin and other toxins. Some toxins feel really bad and they make us feel yucky, but they're not keeping us from healing. And so because it's a toxic world and we can't avoid all toxins, it's impossible to do that. You have to sort of pick and choose which ones are important to avoid. That's the whole premise or the whole foundation of this approach. And that's why it makes my skin crawl and makes me so frustrated to read posts about people who say that, oh, you know, I live on the ocean, so it must not be in mold. Well, no, I've found super toxins plenty on the ocean. Or people who say, I walked into a rental and it smelled a little musty. And I'm like, well, was it a super toxin? And they're like, I don't know. So you have to learn to use your body to identify this stuff. There is no test for it. How do you learn to do that? Well, anyone can learn, but you have to dedicate yourself to following the instructions and doing what it takes. And that's sort of the topic of a couple of books by Lisa Peterson and Eric Johnson, and also my new book, Lyme Disease Supercharged. So I'm not going to go into that right now because I've made other videos on it and there's other resources and it's a whole nother discussion. But to really master this approach and be able to use it, you have to dedicate yourself to learning how to turn your body into a superhero, superhuman. I sort of use that jokingly just to give you an idea, a concept of it, where you become the test mechanism to see where the super toxins are. So I hope this video has been helpful. Disclaimer, I am not a medical doctor. I am just a patient, and I do not intend for this video to be medical advice. Okay, hope you guys are having a good day.